Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hello all, I Dr. Krunal Soni, Assistant Professor of SDJ International College, affiliated to Veer Narmal South Gujarat University, Surat, would like to thank UGC Human Resource Development Center, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present my topic for today, how to make research proposal. I would also like to thank Dr. Jagdish Joshi sir, who is a professor and director of UGC Human Resource Development Center, Gujarat University. Talking about his achievement, then he is very visionary and dynamic person and working since long for the upliftment of UGC Human Resource Development Center by taking various initiatives, by designing many courses for faculties and administrative staff. UGC HRDC is one of the, you can say, the dynamics and achieved a milestone in itself by having one of the leading human resource development center in India and number one in Gujarat state. And that is a prime reason that it has created a history by setting the benchmark for organizing various courses for the professors and academic staff. UGC HRDC has created a content for online teaching and education for the professors of the college and university of Gujarat, along with the Department of Higher Education, Commissioner of Higher Education, and College Consortium Gujarat, that is KCG, in 2020. It has also developed various contents for the training of administrative staff for the college and university, and that is the reason that 105 participants has took part in this initiative. Okay, now my topic for the today's presentation is how to prepare research proposal, right? This is a question for many research scholars or professors, those who are, entering into the research field by having the prime requirement for the academic excellence to have the PhD degree and to have a good publications for the API score, that is called Academic Performance Index. So this is a general question for all the professors and research scholars, how to have effective research proposal to proceed for the further research, right? So to have a good research proposal is a prime requirement to get enter into the research. So this is one of the prime topic for all the professors to have a good research proposal, right? So talking about myself, I have already given the introduction. Dr. Krunal Soni, Assistant Professor, STJ International College, affiliated to Veer Narmal South Gujarat University. And I'm presenting my topic over here is UGC Human Resource Development Center, Gujarat University. So let's begin with the presentation. Fine. So how to prepare effective research proposal? Fine. So what is research proposal? First, we need to understand. So in a layman language, if I need to bifurcate research proposal, meaning that it is the intents of the researchers in terms of their objectives, right? So basically what research proposal will contain. So research proposal is basically represent the objectives of the researcher, that why researcher wants to go for this particular research, right? So it particularly represent that what researcher is going to achieve out of his work during the tenure while he is going to conduct the research. So basically research proposal will show the intention of the researcher. It is a detailed plan of actions that signifies what research is going to achieve out of his work. That is nothing but the objectives, or you can say the scope of the study that he is going to cover out of his proposal, right? So if researcher had certain objective to achieve, but this objective he is going to achieve in which parameter, in which sector, in which area, or what are the things that he is going to conduct, or what are the things that he is going to cover up in his research, right? So he cannot go with the wide span of area or topic, but has to narrow down his concept. So that is what the basic overview that he needs to design in the research proposal, and that is what the researcher needs to mention as a part of his plan of work to achieve his further work. Okay, let's go ahead with the next slide. Right. So before going to all the parameters of research proposal, first we need to understand the importance of good research proposal for the researchers and research scholar or for the academicians. right? Why research proposal is important and what are the criteria that is required to make your research proposal to be acceptable as and when you are going for any viva or any selection process for your PhD or any you can say minor research proposal or major research proposal that you are putting for the taking grants from the government or various government universities, right? So you need to represent a good research proposal. So yes, first of all we need to understand the benefit of having good research proposal. So proposal writing is important to your pursuit of a graduate degree. The proposal is in fact intellectual, scholastic, not legal contract between you and your committee, right? It is just a proposal. It is not a contract. It is not affiliated or it is not stamped contract. But yes, this is just a broad overview that you are going to do as far as your research projects is concerned for the future purpose. So it's just a proposal. It's not a contract. Then it specify what you will do, right? So it is for the future guidelines, future plan of actions that researcher is going to achieve in his research project and how you will do it, right? So it basically shows the blueprint of your plan of action that you are going to do as a part of your research proposal. So it is a blueprint of your research and how you will interpret the results, right? So what are the methodology and terminology that you are going to use, and based on that how you will interpret your results for your proposal. So that is what it is called, interpretation, right? So it signifies what you will do, how you will do, and how you will interpret the results that you have received out of your projects. Okay, so the objective of having a good research proposal is to have, it will help you to describe what you will do, why it should be done, right? What you will do means what you are going to do, why you are going to do, how you will do it, right? And what you expect the results out of it. So being clear about these things from the beginning will help you to complete your thesis in a timely fashion, right? So if you are clear on this parameter, definitely nobody can stop you to reach at your goal, to submit your thesis on complete timely manner, no delay, and with efficiently proving your results that you want to achieve out of your study. So that is one of the most important requirement for all the researchers, to have the clarity on what, why, when, how, all these things should be very clear if you are going for any research. Okay, so a vague or weak or fuzzy proposal can lead to long, painful, and often unsuccessful thesis writing exercise. So obviously, if you are not clear with your topic, if you don't have any idea how you are going to achieve these results, right? If you are not clear what you are going to do in your research proposal, so definitely you will face a problem and that will lead to difficulty in your research proposal. So that is what you need to take care as far as your research proposal is concerned, that you should have a clear cut idea about what you are going to do, and that is a prime requirement that every researcher needs to take care of it, right? Okay, a clean, well thought out proposal form the backbone for the thesis itself, right? So what the thesis is going to achieve, that will be reflected in your proposal as well, because proposal is a stepping stone to reach at the thesis level, right? So if your research proposal is clear, all the dimensions of the thesis that you are going to achieve, that is already clear with you, and if it is well defined, then you don't have to do much effort as far as your thesis are concerned, right? But if it is not clear, then you have to make a certain efforts to make it clear and to make it more understandable, right? So you have to give more justice as far as your research thesis is concerned if your research proposal is not good. So if you have done the work, if you have done the ground level work at the beginning of the research, that is at the level of research proposal, then you don't have to make much effort as far as your thesis submission part is concerned. So definitely it should be very clear and precise. Fine. So good thesis proposal hangs on a good idea, right? So ultimately, we are discussing about a good research proposal. But ultimately, if anybody asks me, what is it? What is it? What is the meaning of good research proposal? Its simple meaning is to have a good idea, to have a uniqueness, right? Research means you are going to research something which is already searched, right? So what extra things that you are going to provide out of the topic which is already searched, right? So what society will get extra, what society will get something extra out of it, that is called research, right? And that is what we need to take care of it. So once you have a good idea, can draft the proposal in an evening, right? So if you are clear with your idea, you can draft the proposal within a day itself, right? So before having drafting the proposal, you should have done the ground level work, right? So that is what it is required. So proposal help you to estimate the size of the projects. Don't make the project too big, right? Research proposal should have some very limited specific number of pages and the things that we need to cover that we will discuss in the later slides, right? So it should not be too big. It should be up to the mark, to the point, what you are going to do, how you are going to do, and what you will going to achieve, right? Not more than that, right? Yes. So points to be raised before making proposal, right? So before making proposal, what are the points that you need to discuss? So first of all, research problem and why we are going to conduct this study, right? So that will be defined by the statement of the problem, whatever the research problem that you are going to, identify out of your research. So that should be defined from the selection and statement of the problem, right? And that is called problem identification, prioritizing your problems and justification of problem that you need to give, right? So this is what the first step is, to have the research problem and why you are going to conduct this study. That is ultimately the objective. Clear? Then second part is how the information should be gettable, from which sources you are going to get the information, or from which sources you are going to cover up the sample size that you are going to study. So that is what we need to take care, right? So how the information is going to get it, right? So you need to go for the previous research, right? How previous researcher have collected the data for this particular topic, and based on this you will also apply this particular study in your area or in your geographical region, and accordingly you will go with the same sample size with the population, and then you will try to identify whether this things is applicable in your area or not. So that will help you through the literature review, right? So you have to go with the proper literature review as far as the information collection is concerned. Why do conduct research, and what is the achievement of the research, right? So to be specific, we need to define in terms of goals of the study, that is called objectives of the study. Then how to conduct research, how to collect data, what are the variables of the data study, sample size of the study, sampling techniques that you are going to use for the research, and yes, what are the variables that you are going to study. So repetition. So anyways, so variables in terms of basic research covers dependent and independent variable, but if you are going to establish some relationship or some models, so you have a mediating moderating variables also. So depending upon the study and types of tests that you are going to conduct in your research, you need to define the variables that you are going to use in your particular study, right? So collection of data, how much sample size that you are going to collect, depending upon the topic of the study that you are going to conduct. What is the sampling techniques that you are going to use? Random sampling, simple random sampling, stratified random sampling, right? Non-probabilistic sampling, convenient sampling, non-convenient sampling. So depending upon the research that you are going to do, you need to use your sampling techniques as well. Fine. So how to collect data, that is data collection plan. So if I'll talk about a normal research, so if any normal research is conducted, let's suppose if somebody is collecting the data for the advertising impact on consumer buying behavior, right? So he needs to define his geographical region, and geographical region wise he needs to decide the sample size that he needs to collect, right? So where there are various sample size formulas available, right, that researcher needs to utilize to identify the minimum samples that he needs to collect for his research, right? And that he needs to define in his research proposal approximately, right? It could be vary because we don't know what response that we are going to get from the market, but yes, at least by considering the minimum sample size, we need to plan our sample size that we are going to attain at least, and that we need to define, and that sample size we need to allocate according to the different geographical region that we are going to collect based on the population that this region is covering, right? So population data you will get it from population census, right? We have a latest population census 2021. So you can use this data if your geographical region is pre-decided. So accordingly, you can bifurcate your sample size into different geographical region by considering their populations. Okay. How will be monitored and how the research finding will be used, right? So that is called societal importance, right? You have conducted your research, right? You got the outcome of your research. So how your research outcome will helpful to the society, right? So societal importance that you need to define, right? Until and unless if your research doesn't have any societal importance, you will not get the importance in the market, right? If you are planning for research proposal for some good minor research project or major research proposal, so you need to define the importance of your research in terms of the society, how the society will get the benefit out of your research. Then only the society will have some acceptance of this study, and people will start investing, or government might be interested in your research if you are providing some fruitful outcome for the future benefit, right? So that is what we need to define, and these things will be defined from the beginning itself, from identifying the research problem by considering the objectives of the study and reaching to the data collection and findings of the study. So that is the beginning of the research that will precise what is your objective, what is your problem statement, and why you are going to do this particular study, right? So that should be very clear, and that is why I told you, if your research proposal is clear, and before preparing research proposal, if your idea is clear, why, what, when, and how, so you can prepare your research proposal in a day itself. And if your research proposal is clear, so I don't feel, or I don't think so, that you will face any problem by conducting your research, by reaching to the submission of the thesis. And this process is going to be much more easier if you are clear from the beginning itself, right? So clearance from the beginning is very much required as far as your research is concerned. Okay. And that clearance you will get it from the mirror image of your research proposal, right? So research proposal is most important parameter as far as your research part is concerned. Okay. So what and how much resources are needed, and who will provide the resources, right? So if we are in social science, so we don't have all the projects which we required some fundings or something. But if we are going for any science project, right, or those who are from science field or medical field, and if they are going for some research, right, let's suppose, yes, right now we had faced with the pandemics of COVID-19. So it was a challenge for the medical science, right, to design or to develop the vaccination to beat the COVID-19. So at that point of time, we can't expect that people will do it by themselves, right? Because it required crores of rupees, and for that they need to submit their proposal to the government, and accordingly government has allowed to go for some researchers to find out the solution for the COVID-19, and ultimately we have it. And now we are at the position that we have almost beat the COVID-19 by having vaccination, right? So for that part, yes, definitely. So medical and pharmaceutical companies needs to define where these resources they will get it, either from the government or from the financial institutions, right? Because without resources you cannot conduct the research. So that is a prime requirement, right? How much we required and from where we will get it, that is predefined in advance for researchers. Yes. So ultimately, what is research proposal now? I hope it is clear to all of you. So now it is more clear. So it deals with the idea of research for intention of the researchers that wants to achieve clear idea about methodology and objective. So now we are discussing about the content of the research proposal in terms of its meaning, right? So if I'm saying this is a good research proposal, so what sort of things which is required or which are required as a part of good research proposal? So these are the parameters that we need to consider as a part of a research proposal. Out of this parameter, what we will have to cover, that we will discuss in the later slide, right? But first of all, we will discuss what are the key points that the research proposal should have it to have acceptance at the earlier, right, or at the on a priority basis. Yes. So is represent the intention of the researcher that wants to achieve. Second part is clear idea about the methodology and objectives that researcher has used. Third part, time and resources which is required, right? How much time, matlab, research should have some time frame, right? It should have some time frame. If medical science wants to go for the searching for vaccination, So they had some time frame limitations, right? Because people were facing some issues and government is in hurry. So they need to define the time frame out of which they will come out with the vaccination, right? At the same time, what are the amounts that they require to meet or to beat the COVID-19 as early as possible. So that is what they need to define, right? As a part of research proposal, right? So time and resources, much needed and very painful work. You should have very clear cut idea about this particular things. Over budget will have a killing effect and under budget will have a killing effect, right? In both the ways, you will hamper your work. So proper estimation of time and resources is very much important for the researcher to have a timely completion and to have the effective completion of your research work, right? Okay. Then ways to prepare findings and conclusion, right? How you are going to prepare the findings and conclusion, that is also we need to define, right? So how different ways that you are going to represent your findings and conclusion of your research, that is what is important as a part of researcher or research scholar or being an academician to define it properly. Research proposal is also called a detailed plan of action, or you can say the prospectus, right? If you are going for buying any house or something, right? So we are first demanding the prospectus, right? So it is a detailed plan of action that we can, represent to the society, and society can also have the clear-cut access or clear-cut idea about what is going to be done, right? So this is called a detailed plan of action that a researcher is going to do for the future part of action. And it is also called a proposed plan of researcher that he intends to communicate, right? It is also called a proposed plan of action that he needs to convey to the society, right? What actually that he is going to get it out of his research and how this research results is going to benefit to the society, right? So this is what he intends to communicate to the society. That is also we need to define. Fine. Okay. Now, what are the main points of research proposal as a part of thesis, right? So it is the biggest question for all the academician and professor whenever they wants to apply for PhD admission, right? So they are always in a question mark point, how to prepare a research proposal, what are the things that we need to cover, out of this thing, what are the various sub points that we need to take care, right? So all these questions are eating them, right? So these are the things that will help you, the things we need to cover as a part of your research proposal for the thesis. So various terminologies that are going to use as a part of research proposal, depending upon why the research is carried out, right? So all the parameter will convey the main things that why researcher wants to conduct this particular study, right? So this is a various terminologies that is going to be used, right? So yes, various terminologies are used for research. So what are these? So first is research outline. We need to define research outline, how we are going to do this particular research. So complete outlines, complete, idea about how the research is going to conduct, how the research is going to be carried out. So that will be defined under the research outline. Then synopsis of the research, right? So synopsis of the research, that is also you need to submit as a part of your research. Then plan of research, that is also you need to submit. Proposal that you need to submit. Thesis plan, how the thesis you are going to do it. So complete thesis plan you need to design, right? So thesis plan means what? Somebody will have a question, what is thesis plan? So thesis plan means, let's suppose if your PhD is going in semester wise. So semester 1, 2, right? 3, 4, 5, right? So out of this semester, what you are going to achieve? Let's suppose in sem in 1, so you are going to complete introduction, right? In sem 1 introduction, in sem 2 you are complete LR, right? In 3 you will complete RM, right? So timeline, or you can say the plan of research that you need to submit, right? So this is for data collection that you are going to do, right? Here you will go to for analyzing, right? So all these things you need to define very specifically, right? So this is called a time frame for the research, right? So that is what you need to define. Fine. So this is actually, this is called a blueprint, right? This is called a blueprint of your research. Clear? Depending upon the time period, right? So if you don't want to mention a semester wise, so you can mention like a 3 months time period for this, 4 month time period for this, 5 months time period for this, and so on, right? So whatever the time frame, time period that you are expecting to do for particular activity, so that you need to define as a part of your thesis plan, right? So that is what is required. So that is why it has been called as a blueprint, right? And that's why it provides the basic idea and entire plan of action that the researcher is going to do from the entire time frame of his research till the submission of your or submission of his or her thesis, right? And that is why ideal research proposal is called when they are take care about the various points like objectives, data collection, data analysis, tools and techniques of the research, right? So if these parameters are okay, then nobody will question mark on your research work as well, right? And research work will be okay when your research proposal will be clear and precise in terms of these parameters. Clear? So that is what is required. Now, what are the components of research proposal? So components of research proposal. So research proposal is a concise and coherent summary of your research, and it set out the central issues of question that you intend to address, right? So research proposal basically what? So it's basically point out why you want to conduct a research, or it basically point out the research problem, why you want to conduct this particular study, what is the importance of conducting this particular study. So that is what we need to find out. Clear? So yes, it's a component of research. Clear? Fine. Okay. Now, it outlines the general idea of the study within which your research falls, right? Referring to the current state of knowledge and any recent debates on the topic. It covers all the elements of the study that researcher wants to cover and also detailed plan of actions for data collection. And it should answer the following question. Mainly, your research proposal should cover these three aspects. These three aspects should be covered very precisely as far as your research proposal is concerned. That is research problem, right? The objectives of your study and detailed plan of actions for the research. So if I being an evaluator, evaluating your research proposal, so I should look at this particular things, right? So research problem should link to your objectives and how these objectives you are going to achieve. That is a detailed plan of actions for the research. So detailed plan of action for the research covers various aspects, right? How you are going to cover up the data, what are the data analytical tools and techniques that you are going to use, what would be your sample size, sampling techniques that you are going to use, what are the variables of your studies, right? So this is called detailed plan of actions, right? So these parameters should have a various things, right? So sample size, sampling techniques, right? Then research design, data analysis tools and techniques, various aspects, and how the findings and conclusion that is going to cover, right? So findings and conclusion that is going to cover. So this covered various aspects. So that is what we need to cover as far as your research part is concerned. Okay, so as we have seen in the components of research proposal that we need to cover. So now here we have a detailed discussion about what exactly the points that we need to cover as a part of the research. So first of all, it's your title. So first of all, you need to cover a title. It should be very clear, right? It should be very clear. So title should be very clear, right? Your title should be justified. What is your topic and from where you are going to conduct your research, and right? So what are things that you are going to achieve, that should be reflected from your title, right? So title should be very clear, precise, should not be too long, it should not be too short, but it should be very clear and precise, right? So based on the title, you should define your introduction as well, right? So introduction should cover all the topics that you are going to cover as a part of your research, right? So if somebody has the title of their research project, that to cover a study on impact of what I can say, a study on impact of online banking services on consumer behavior in Ahmedabad city, right? So if you are talking about online banking, so your introduction should cover various variable, right? So if your topic is online banking, so online banking, so your introduction should cover what about online banking, right? What about consumer behavior, right? So your research proposal should convey this particular things as a part of your introduction. So that must be included in your research proposal, because your research proposal is basically focused on consumer behavior and online banking services, right? So you should cover what is online banking, right? What are the banks that is providing online banking, right? What are the facilities that has been provided through online banking, right? What are the problems that has been faced by the consumer through the online banking, and what are the consumer behavioral factor as a part of online banking? Why consumer will choose the online banking by considering the availability of offline bankings, right? So that is the things that you need to consider, and from which you need to define the statements of problem, right? So statement of problem means why you want to do the research, what are the X factor that you want to study out of this research, right? So this will be defined by the statement of problem, right? So it should be very precise and very clear, right? So these are the factors that has been affected consumers to use online banking in so and so region. So I want to study whether this factors is applicable to my region or not, or might be you want to try some other factors in your region to have the affectability of consumer behavior towards the online banking. So these are the things that you need to cover as a part of your statement of problem. So your statement of problem should define your objective, right? So based on the statement of problem, you need to define your objectives, right? So again, yes, so rationale, significance of your study, right? So whatever things that you are going to achieve out of your study, what is the rationale of your study, right? Rationale matlab importance of your study, right? What would be the importance of your study if you are conducting the study like consumer behavior towards online banking, right? So what is the importance of your study in the market to the society? So that you should define very clearly. What is it, fruitful outcome that you are going to derive that will helpful to the society, right? So that is called rationale of the study. So along with rationale and significance of the study, you should also mention the scope and limitations of the study, right? So scope and limitations. So as a researcher, you should not cover each and every part of the research. So that definitely that should have some limitations of the study, right? If we are looking at various news channel at the time of election, so news channels are mentioning that we have covered this much sample and out of this area, and it will not represent the mindset of entire population, but yes, we have covered few samples from different regions, and based on that we are concluding that, but it is not applicable to everyone, and it is not 100% accurate, right? Always it is 99.99, something like that, right? So this is the limitation, that we cannot contain entire population, right? So every researcher have their own limitations, and how accurately, or what is the maximum limit that he will cover the limitations of the studies, that depends upon the researcher and the type of research that he is going to conduct, right? So in your research, what are the things that you have covered and what are the things that you have not covered? So that not covered part is a part of your limitations, right? So limitations of the study that you need to define very precisely. Then next part is review of literature. Yes, what is the previous authors results, or previous authors have some inventions from your topic, that is what you need to study, and how they have conducted the study. So you will also get the idea about your research as well, how to conduct these things and how to proceed for the further identification and further results. So that is what we need to define, right? And based on this, if you are doing this much things, now you are in a position to define your objectives, right? So once you are clear with your title, out of the title you have defined your various variables of the study. From the variables, right, you have gone through the statement of problem. Statement of problem you have derived from the literature review. Out of the literature review, you got the significance of the study and limitations of the study that your study is having by considering the previous researcher. And once you are through with this all the parameters, you will in a position to define the clear and precise objectives of your research, right? Based on which you will carry your further study, right? Then operational definitions of term use. If you have used some specific jargons or some technological words, which you feel that people will not understand in a single reading, so that you need to define it, right? Then you have to design the hypothesis. So hypothesis should be linked with the objectives that you have defined, right? So your hypothesis should represent the objectives that you have defined, right? So your hypothesis should be designed based on the objectives that you have decided for your study, right? Then which methodology that you are going to use. So depending upon the objectives and hypothesis, how you are going to prove this hypothesis by using various methodology. So that you have to define in methodology, right? How you are going to use different tests as a part of methodological work that you need to define. Then time schedule or work plan that we have discussed in previous slide, right? You need to provide a detailed plan of action by considering the time frame. Like in 3 months, I will do title finalization, 6-month introduction, 5 months literature review, 4 months for data collection, and so on, right? So you have to first make understand the total time available with you, and accordingly you have to bifurcate your work. This is called plan of action, right? Just like we being an academician, we are preparing session plan. So the same way you need to prepare your research proposal plan, right? And it is very important to complete your work on a timely basis, right? Until and unless if you are not time bounding, believe me, you will not complete your work on a time, right? I had found many researchers who have not been able to complete their work on time, right? So definitely you have to design a time frame, and accordingly you have to give the justification to the time, right? And accordingly you need to work, because if we are non-funding works, then it's sometimes it is okay, but if you are going with the funding works, definitely you have to stick to the time, because you need to report to the funding agencies, and if you have not worked properly, might be your proposal get rejected, or might be you are get penalized with the monetary losses, right? So yes, definitely it is very important to stick to the time limit, and that is why budget parameters also need to define, right? So if you are going for any research, so you need to provide a proposal or approximate budget estimation that you require for various things of your research that you want to proceed further, right? What is the amount of budget that you require for each parameter that you need to prepare and represent to the approving authority, right? It could be government, it could be university, right? And if they found based on your idea and the justification of costing that you have provided, so definitely you have a chance to get approval of that research project, right? So yes, it should be have some importance. Then chapter outline, right? So chapter outline means you need to define what will be your chapter. So like chapter 1 introduction, 2 LR, right? 3 RM, 4 data analysis, 5 findings and conclusion, right? So that is what we need to define, right? So this is called chapterization scheme. So it depends upon the researcher to researcher how you are going to chapterize your reports. Sometimes introduction cover 2 chapters as well, so depends upon your researcher. There is no time contract or approving things that you need to stick to this chapter only, but yes, generally this is the sequence that researchers are using. Yes, then bibliography and references. We usually in social science we are referring APA style index, right? So APA style references we need to provide, right? So and followed by the conclusion that you have received from your research, and some appendix, special terminology or jargons or short forms that we have used, so that you need to define at the end of the reports, right? Fine. So this is the points that you need to cover in your research proposal. So whatever we have covered, that is a part of it. So the introduction, what should introduction cover? So main purpose of the introduction is to provide the necessary backgrounds or context for the research problem. So research problem will come out from the variables that you are going to study, right? And variables will get it from the clear-cut title that we have defined for the research, right? Because whatever title we have defined, out of that we will get the variables of the study, and that variable will be the part of our introduction, right? So how to frame the research problem is perhaps the biggest problem in proposal writing, right? So Introduction should cover the idea about the variables, as well as it will be followed by the research problem that we are going to define, or you can say research cap. So what should be the research problem? So statement of the problem, which is often refers to the purpose of the study, right? So research problem is basically the purpose of the study, right? What the problem is and why want to conduct the study, that is called the problem statement, or you can say, right, research cap. So it provides the context and set the stage for your research question in such a way as to show it necessary and its importance, right? Why researcher wants to carry, what is the social importance of this study, so that will be reflected in this, right? It presents the rationale of your proposed study and clearly indicate why it is worth doing, right? So that is scope of the study, right? So briefly describe the major issues and sub problems to be addressed by your research, right? So it clearly define the major issues that you want to highlight, and at the same time, what are the sub issues that you want to cover as a part of your study, that will be described under the research proposal in the parameter of research problem, right? So once you will do it, you will definitely get the variables that you want to cover. As I told you, from the research title only, you will get the variables. But yes, research problem will have a more clear-cut idea about this. So it will help to identify key independent and dependent variables of your experiment. Alternatively, specify the phenomena you want to study, right? And which phenomena you want to study, that will be specified with this particular aspects. State your hypothesis or theory, if any. For exploratory or phenomenological research, you may not have any hypothesis, right? For exploratory and phenomenal research, you don't have any hypothesis, right? So set the delimitations or boundaries of your research, right? So that is called limitations, and provide definitions of key concept. That is optional if you want to provide. Then literature review, I will not cover in a detailed manner, but in a layman language, if I want to convey what is a literature review. So literature review means what exactly the previous researcher has gone through with the particular topic, right? So literature review should cover all the basic things like what previous researcher's title was there, right? To achieve this title, what are the variables that he has studied? To study this variable, what are the sampling techniques and sample size that he has studied? What research design that he has utilized? In which area he has conducted the study? To conduct this study, what are the various methodology that he has used as a part of data analysis? And out of this data analysis, what is the findings and conclusion? And based on the finding and conclusion, what is the societal importance of his study? So if I'll summarize these things out of previous researcher, so that would be the literature review for my study, right? So it will give the clear-cut idea what is required in my research by contributing or by looking at the contribution of the previous researcher. So I will get in my research, what should I do as a part of sample size, methodology, research design, right? How my study is going to importance for the society. So that parameter I will decide based on the literature review. So literature review is very important for the researcher, and every researcher should do this practice very precisely, very honestly. And if, believe me, if you do this practice, you will not face a problem for the further process, because you will have a clear-cut idea what you are going to do for the future process. Okay. Now deciding the methodology. So method action is very important because it tells your research committee how your plan is going to tackle your research problem. Obviously, as I told you, from the title, you will define variables. From the variables, you will define objectives, and out of this objective, how you are going to achieve this. So that will be defined by the methodology that you are going to use for your research. So definitely, it will define your research problem that you are going to do. It will provide your work plan and describe the activities necessary for the completion of your project, right? So that is a detailed plan of actions and activities that is required to complete your projects. Clear? It also called the guidelining principle or guiding principle for writing the method section is that it should contain sufficient information for the readers to determine whether methodology is sound or not, right? So I, being an evaluator of your proposal, if I want to evaluate your project, so that will be done, or that will be looking by methodology that you are going to use. and that will be looked by the chapter of research methodology that you have defined in your research proposal, right? So research methodology chapter is very important as far as your research proposal is concerned for any research. So it should be very precise, to the point, and conceptually it should be clear. That is very important, right? Sometimes I had seen many researchers that they want to cover many things, but they are not clear exactly what is going to applicable in that particular aspect, right? So that is very important as far as your research part is concerned. Furthermore, since there are no well-established and widely accepted canons in qualitative analysis, if you are going for qualitative analysis, there is no more widely accepted terminologies. Your method section needs to be more elaborate than what is required for traditional quantitative research, right? So how precisely, how clearly your methodology chapter is, the more easy for the evaluator to evaluate your project and to relate your project with the title that you are going to achieve in your research, right? So this is very important. And lastly, most importantly, the data collection process in terms of qualitative research has a far greater impact on result as compared to quantitative research, because in qualitative research we are going to survey, we are interviewing people. So what we are going to achieve, what the things that we need to cover, so that all the things should be covered in the methodology part, right? So if you are clear from the beginning, you don't have to scratch your head at the time of conducting the study. You are ready with your research plan, so you can immediately go into the market and execute the plan that you have decided in the previously. So yes, that is important, that the methodology part should be very clear. Now, how to describe the outcomes and general discussion importance to the society, right? So obviously, whenever you are preparing your research proposal, you are not at the stage to communicate any outcomes to the society. That is quite important, right? But however, sometimes there might be some situations that whenever you are going for the collection of your data for the research, you need to answer certain questions to the respondent, right? And for that, you should aware about some societal importance of your outcomes out of this research that you are going to get, right? So people will convince, if at all, if you are facing any problem, and you will not face any problem to get the sufficient amount of responses that is required, or you can say that is a prime requirement for your research to complete, right? So some things, some idea about some bird overview about the outcomes that you are getting, you should have it. And finally, the discussion that you need to do. So it is very important, right, to have the potential impact of your proposed research, right? So definitely in a detailed manner, you need to define the societal importance, right? So people will get a confidence and motivated to provide the responses and motivated to read your outcomes that you are going to get out of your study. Clear? And that is why sometimes it has been asked by many universities, government, and institutions to write your strength and weakness of the projects, right? So they will come to know whether strength are on the higher side or weakness are on the higher side, right? And if they wants to suggest something to modify something out of your research proposal, or some suggestions they want to put going to incorporate in your research proposal, so they are in a better position to guide at this moment if they are aware about the strength and weakness of your proposal. So it will enhance, it will strengthen your research proposal from the research committee if they will feel any improvement that is needed by looking at the strength and weaknesses of your outcomes, right? So it is important to describe the strength and weakness of the outcomes of your research, right? And at the same time, that strength and weakness you need to define in terms of the time frame that you have and the financial resources availability that you are going to get for your research project. Clear? Fine. Now, things to be avoided. What are the things that we need to avoid in research? So first is failure to provide proper context to frame the research questions, right? You should have proper material, proper plan of action, proper idea about what exactly you want to going to achieve, and based on that you need to frame the questions for the research. Failure to delimit the boundary conditions for your research, right? Sometimes we are unable to find out the limitations of your research, so that should not be happen. We should aware about the limitations as well as the strength of our research, right? And that is why in previous slide we have discussed that this is very important. Failure to cite landmark studies, right? So sometimes it might happen that people are taking the contents from the people, but they are not citing them. So it should not happen. So whatever contents that you are taking from previous researcher, so it's always advisable to properly citing them, right, to avoid the plagiarism, right, and to provide proper justification to their work as well. Yes. So failure to accurately present the theoretical and empirical contributions by other researchers, that is what we have covered. Then failure to stay focused on the research questions. Sometimes what happens while designing the questionnaire, researchers are getting deviated from the actual objectives that they want to achieve for their research. So right, so that should not be happen. As and when you are preparing research question, you should stick to your research objectives, what you want to achieve and how you are going to achieve. So that is what you need to define. Clear cut idea should be there as a part of research. Failure to develop a coherent and persuasive argument for the research, right? Sometimes we are unable to define the arguments about our research, right? So being a researcher, you should learn to criticize your research as well as you should understand the positive parameters of your research. Every time it's not possible that your research should always have the positive impact, right? So you being a researcher, you should understand the limitation of your research and the things that you have not covered. So definitely you should not hide those things and you have to mention in your proposal. So that will be convincing part as far as your research proposal is concerned. So too much detail on minor issues, but not enough detail on major issues. This is called deviating from the topic. We are kind of covering much details on unnecessary things or the things which are not a part of our variable. And we are covering very less amount of information for the actual variables that we are going to study for the research. So that should not be happen, right? That will not convince to the evaluator being a researcher, right? So might be there is a high chances to get failure if you are not focusing on major topics or major issues in maximum part of your research proposal and you are giving importance to the less important things of your research proposal, right? So that should not happen. Too much rambling without a clear sense of direction, right? Means we are not clear what we are going to do, right? So this is what it's called. We are not aware about the path that we are going to go and what you are going to achieve. So that is what it's called, too much rambling, right? So too many citation lapses and incorrect references. I had seen many researchers that they are very highly interested to give more citations after at the end of the research paper or research proposal or thesis. So unnecessary giving citation practice should always be avoided. Yes, definitely you should cite those people from which you have taken the content or from which you have taken the idea for for any part of your research proposal. Definitely you need to cite them, but I had seen many people those who are citing unnecessary from the Google Scholar, so that thing should be avoided, right? You should cite those people from which you have taken the content only. Unnecessary citation should be avoided, and too long or too short, right? Your research proposal should be to the point, not too long, not too short. It should be ideally 6 to 7 pages, right? To the point things you need to write and accordingly you need to proceed. Do's and don'ts, right? So it should have a professional look. You should make it interesting, right? Very informative and meaningful. You should use a very easy and understandable language to the people, right? Present content in a page, have a clear heading and subheadings, be concise and be precise, as I already told you, not too long, not too short. It should be very clear from grammatical and spelling point of view, and it should be in accurate format, right? Whatever the format that is acceptable in your region or guidelines provided by universities or the acceptable criteria by the funding agencies. So you need to abide by some things and accordingly you need to prepare. If you go for many Scopus or Web of Science journals, so they have their own formats to submit their research papers. So accordingly you need to follow their guidelines and accordingly you need to submit. Otherwise you need to face some revisions also. So that change should be taken care, right? And don't means use no word which you don't understand. Matlab, you should not use those jargons or words from which you are not able to understand, right? Or which is not, you are not aware about those things. So you should not use those jargon as a part of understanding. And use of difficult words should always be avoided. Sometimes what happens, we are communicating to the society, we are convincing to the society. So sometimes it might be happens that we are using so much hi-fi jargons which society is unable to understand, right? So this practices should be avoided, right? So you should use those jargon which is easily understandable, so that the message that you want to convey to the society, it should be clearly reachable and understandable. So final plan of action, yes. So if you are going to prepare your research proposal, so first of all, your topic, then starting with introduction, right? Topic area, basic research questions that you are going to ask, significance to knowledge, then literature review. Under the literature review, what are the previous literatures that has been done on the particular topics that you need to define. Time frame and budget, finalization. So this is time schedule or work we have already discussed, but yes, time schedule if you want to go, so you can see that 3 months time, 6 months time for each particular works that you need to go. So you need to first prepare a chapterization scheme, and based on that, what is the time frame is required, and along with this you need to define the budget allocation for it. Various researcher needs different resources, and different resources need having different cost. So every researcher have their own costing part, so that you need to prepare. Proposed budget plan jisko bola jata hai, so that we need to plan. So might be your research required this much resources as a part of your research proposal to carry your research. So out of this, whatever the things which is required from your side, you need to mention. Then organization of the report chapter outline, right? So outline for the dissertation and 4 major parts of the report, that is introductory, finding, discussion, summary, and conclusion, right? So if you are going with this, so these are the 4 parameters which you need to clearly discuss in the research proposal. Then mistakes that you need to avoid. So these are the basic mistakes that we have already discussed. It should not be too long, it should not be too short, right? It should define boundaries of the research, limitations of the research, incorrect citation should be avoided, right? So these are the things which you need to avoid precisely. So thank you so much for patient listening. I hope this is important for you, and you will able to frame your research proposal very precisely and to the point. And I hope you have a much acceptance of getting approval of your research proposal for your research work for the future reference. And I hope this presentation will help you in this regard. Thank you so much.